Hello, everybody. This is Chuck Wiger. We're at the state capitol, and today it's really fun to be able to talk about the Bruntrup Farm, which is part of the Maplewood Historical Society, Maplewood Area Historical Society efforts. And I have with me the Vice President of the Maplewood Area Historical Society, Bill Bruntrup. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. And Bob Jensen, the President. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Nicole de Guzman, the Executive Director for the Historical Society.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, and all a part of the Bruntrup Farm. And I think many of our viewers would be aware that it's right off of County Road D, about 2 blocks or so east of White Bear Avenue. And we have some pictures in that just to show that with the viewers if you haven't had a chance to go out and visit. But it's really a wonderful memory for me to be able to be in a position to be talking about it, because this was a farm that was going to be demolished as a part of the so-called development efforts on Maplewood Mall area. And so it was when I first met you, Bill, Bill Bruntrup, and a number of others, that were involved, and Mayor Rosbach, particularly. But there was a group of people that came down to see if we might be able to save the farm. And so former state rep Betty McCollum and I had a town hall meeting, and over in Maplewood, to talk about, is there any way where the state of Minnesota could help, to move the farm, and so so that it could be preserved. And how about Bill? You were there. You were part of that, and you have recorded history so well. I appreciate those articles. But
Thank you.
Bill, tell us what happened.
Well, the land was being sold for development, and
Right on White Bear, and let's remind everybody about the Bruntrup Farm. And actually, we have a great sign here. We'll put this all in perspective. That there was a farm
Right.
through your family.
it's right on the corner of Lydia and White Bear Avenue. It was just kind of the main entrance to the Maplewood Mall, which is across the street. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Carolyn Peterson and Char Waslick.
Oh yes,
They were two of I got a call from them after we sold the property, and said, "Would you be interested in saving the buildings?" And I said, "Absolutely." And they started the ball rolling, and then I think they contacted you, and then we had a committee together. And I remember we came down to the Capitol for many hearings.
no, so that was a combination of the others. I was going to mention some of the others as well. But as you're here, but yes, it was that grassroots citizen effort where it was going to be raised, if you will, the building. And so you came down, and but this was in your family, so you felt pretty strongly about
Absolutely,
that.
yeah, I did.
And so before we talk about the farm today and what's being done, what was it in the past?
Well, it was a dairy farm started by my grandparents in 1891.
1891.
Yes, and the original.
That whole area. I mean, how many acres are we talking about?
Well, eventually the farm was 175 acres.
So that whole Maplewood Mall area,
a good portion of
was
Maplewood
roamed
Mall
by
area.
cows.
Yeah, true.
Yes.
Yeah, and so anyhow, the original 40 acres was a wedding gift to my grandparents from the bride's parents, and then it just evolved through the years. They added property to it, and it was an active dairy farm until 1964, and then the farming continued. But at that time, utilities were coming, a lot of assessments and one thing and another. And
Yes.
my father was born in 1900, so he was getting at the age where he was thinking about retirement. My mother was sick, and he started selling off some of the property, and so that's kind of where it went. And the last of this, when we saved the buildings, was in 1999. We actually moved the buildings, like as you say, Chuck, over to County Road D, which is about three blocks away, and so it was quite a process.
And Bill, would you like to just share a memory that you have of the farm early on?
Well, early on,
Memory or two.
I guess some of my earliest memories was the cattle, the calves, that type of thing, and then as it got older, driving tractors and just the farming itself, and I think it's best place in the world to be brought up. I couldn't imagine a better upbringing. You know, I just really enjoyed it. Of course, I always say it was the hardest memory ever, or the hardest decision I ever made when we finally decided that I was the last one. My sister had died in 1994, and my wife and I tried moving back there, but when I grew up there, it was country, more or less country, and it was quiet, and that had all changed by that time. And so two of our children lived there for 5 years, and then we finally made the decision that we had to do something. And
That desire to see the legacy for future generations, and
Mhm.
and again, I mentioned that the legislature was able to,
Yes.
help as a partner. And
Yeah, we couldn't have done it without, that's
but-
for sure.
But the Brentrup family, they put money on the table
Mhm.
to help in the relocation.
And many of the local citizens and merchants as well, so, yep.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so now, Bob Jensen is president, and you have been so dedicated with the other volunteers. Tell us why this is important for preserving, the farm, preserving history.
Well, so much of where we are today is because of where we've been in the past. People will come to us and say, what is the Vento Trail? What was it? What was the Gateway Trail? And there's the whole history of the railroads that came through that area.
Yes.
There's talk about the Gladstone Savannah. What was it originally? Well, originally, back in the 1890s, it was a railroad shop, but people don't remember that. So as you talk about where we are today, why we have the buildings, the trails, we need to know where that came from. And probably not so much for the younger people. It seems like when you reach about age 50 or 60, that's when you start to think about the legacy. What am I
Yep.
leaving? Am I leaving some of my family history? What is my family history? So the Historical Society collects artifacts, documents, photos, that if you come to us, we can tell you perhaps what your ancestors did or what was the story about these historic places. There is another smaller part of it. As you know, Maplewood is kind of long, kind of goes up the east side and across the north side of St. Paul.
Yes.
And history is one way that we can try to unite the different geographic areas of Maplewood, because we were all dairy farms at one time, or truck farms.
Yes.
So by telling the history, we can realize that people in southern Maplewood do have a tie to the northern part of Maplewood.
Great. And Nicole de Guzman, the executive director, it's very great that we can have a staff person, that's a part of the operation, and wonderful volunteer efforts through the Historical Society, which continues. But your role is to help facilitate the wishes of your board of directors. So,
Yes.
Tell us about your job.
I've been with the society for 2.5 years now, and I'm a paid staff member, as you mentioned, and I work part-time. And I work with a fantastic board of directors. They're very active. They're a working board of directors. And then we have about 80 volunteers who volunteer with us on a regular basis. We do volunteer appreciation events for them as well, so that we can keep them engaged.
Yes.
And they're very passionate about preserving the farm and helping us with what we do. Last year alone, we did 40 events throughout.
Yes.
And we're primarily a seasonal event place, so that we only have heating in the historic house.
Mhm.
So we don't have heating in the barn. So
Yeah.
we work throughout the summertime to put on many events.
Good. Well, let's talk about some of the many events that are going on, and it's getting more and more, popular, and not just in Maplewood, but throughout the whole East Metro, and the attention's gaining. So, who would like to share about some of the whether it's the barnyard, the dances, the tours, the trails, the beautiful flowers, the ice cream socials. There's the weddings. You can get married there.
Yes.
Parties. So,
Well, you've
who'd like to
covered it.
start? But and it keeps growing and it's popular. So
Yes. We just took on a strategic plan, so we know where we're going in the next 3 to 5 years. And the expansion of our events is one of the places. And I'd like to highlight one of the events that we do,
Yeah.
and that would be our summer day camp, where we have STEM-based curriculum. We bring in children aged 2 to 5.
and STEM, for those that don't know, the science,
That's
technology,
science, technology,
engineering, math.
engineering, and math.
Yes.
Those are Minnesota education standards.
Yes.
And kids are measured on those standards.
Yes.
So it's not just a fun camp. There's definitely a lot of fun elements to it, but there's also educational elements to it.
And education can be fun.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Hands-on.
the
learning.
education of agriculture, both historic and contemporary, is very hands-on. It's very interesting. The kids learn how to make ice cream. They learn how to make
Yes.
butter, and they can milk by hand. We have a cow on site, a plywood cow that we teach them how to milk. And then they work in the garden a little bit. And it's just wonderful. We play old time games like town ball, which is a predecessor to baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids just come out for 4 days at a time, full days from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then at
Great.
4 p.m. on Thursday, they have a graduation ceremony where they show all of the arts and crafts that they've done, some of the food that they've made, and then they take a hay ride through the prairie.
Yeah.
It's really an exciting event for us. And then we have other more social events.
Mm-hmm.
One of the events coming up in June is Dairy Day, where
Yes.
it's very similar to the summer camp, where you learn how to make butter and the science behind what butter is and how the process is made. And that too is very educational, and that's free as well.
It's so important to the educational dimension, and so that people don't forget and learn. Bill Bruntrop, what would be some of your most favorite activities that are going on now? It's the pride in
Well,
seeing
it's just-
the family's legacy continue. But any particular thing that brings a big smile? I see you when I do get there. You're always there.
Yeah.
And Raydell and others, and
Yeah, it's just fun to see people come and enjoy it, and it brings back memories to so many people. A lot of them didn't grow up on a farm, but they were at grandpa's farm or their parents' farm or whatever, and it brings back memories, and they just love to talk about their childhood or their young adulthood or whatever, and that's what I really enjoy. And then we do the hay rides, and it's always fun to take the kids out on a hay ride,
Yes.
and actually a lot of the adults enjoy it as much as
Yes.
the kids do. So it's I think that's probably my favorite part is seeing people enjoy what's there, and just that it's preserved and that they can see a little bit of history there and see what that area was like, a few years ago. So and it isn't all that many years ago either. So
Right.
it's a lot of people can remember it, and a lot of them will say, "Oh, I remember when it was over on Wiger Avenue," and yeah, it's. I guess that's my favorite memories is watching the enjoyment that other people have. Coming there, so
great. Bob Jensen, president, might be the favorite aspect of your incredible volunteer efforts here.
Well, the big thing that's going to be coming up this summer, to me, it would be the exhibit that we're opening in July about the 3M Center, about the story of how 3M Company moved from the east side of St. Paul into Maplewood in early 1950s. There are some ties to Maplewood, and that's why we brought this sign with today. Bill's father, Herb Bruntrop, helped deliver hay and manure to the William McKnight family. And so one day they asked how could they return the favor. And so Bill's father asked for a sign. This is
3M asked.
Asked,
Yes.
Yep, asked of 3M. And in those days, Scotchlite was just starting to come out. Scotchlite is a sign material that reflects light. So this is one of the early applications for Scotchlite. So it was a very much tie between 3M Company and Maplewood. The other thing about Scotchlite, it was invented by Philip Palmquist, who was a Maplewood resident
Yes.
at that time. So there's some ties to
Went
3M.
to school with his son Dave.
Did you really?
Yes, at North
Okay.
High. Yeah.
So there's some very much ties between Maplewood and 3M Company, and probably what I consider that when 3M moved was the catalyst of why we became a village. Before Maplewood, we were New Canada Township. There was some hesitancy among the residents, who were mainly dairy farmers and truck farmers, to incorporate as a city. They wanted to stay rural. However, when 3M moved in, there was a move by St. Paul to annex that land
Yes.
for the taxes. And to avoid that, the residents then voted to become a village. So that was where the village of